to be available for pet food for consumers to buy. And honestly, some are small to mid-sized pet food companies that really are already out there with products, but they want to do line extensions.
Well, welcome to Pet Food Science Podcast. I'm here with Lisa Schole. We're going to talk about what happens as a pet food comes from idea into market. I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation today, and I'm so pleased to have an expert in this to discuss it with me. So I'm just going to jump in. Lisa, would you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested in this and sort of, what you see in it today?
Thanks for having me today. My background is obviously pet food, but prior to that, I actually am a ruminant nutritionist that ended up in the pet food world by chance. I started with a small mom and pop pet food company located in Fremont, Nebraska, doing product development and R&D work, and realized very quickly that I loved it and continued to grow in my role and my position there. That company became large enough that it was bought by another big company. And ultimately, after a couple years of bouncing around, started Evolve Consulting Group with a former coworker. And so we do product development and R&D work primarily in the pet food space, both on raw materials and finished product.
As the world is looking for healthier, more natural, and sustainable solutions, InnovaFeed's Helucia protein and oil for pets offers a path to a brighter future for pet food. Helucia represents the convergence of the natural upcycling power of Hermetia illucens larvae with InnovaFeed's cutting-edge production technology to produce the highest quality ingredients for pet nutrition with the lowest environmental footprint. Helucia protein and oil for pets has been meticulously developed, tested, and validated to deliver outstanding digestibility and palatability in both dry and wet pet food formulation, while environmental impacts have been validated through a published life cycle assessment. Learn more at innovafeed.com/Helucia.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of experience bringing an idea all the way to something a consumer could buy, and that's what I think we're going to talk about today. Let's start out with the foundation. Where do these ideas come from? Where's the foundation for this process?
Oh my goodness. That is a really, really big question right there. It really depends on the company and the people, honestly. Some are currently making it in their garage and they want to make that all the way, take it full scale. Some have an idea, right? And they may have it written on the back of a napkin and they're ready to see about moving that to being true finished product to be available for pet food for consumers to buy. And honestly, some are small to mid-sized pet food companies that really are already out there with products, but they want to do line extensions. So the ideas come from marketing, they come from R&D, they may come from sales. It may be somebody who really wants something because their dog or cat they believe would enjoy it. So the starting point is so different depending on the person.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you think that as that starting point sort of develops, that how do you integrate it with what that perceived market need is? So you've got an idea, but you kind of want to know it's something we can, we're all trying to run a business. We're trying to make money. How does that get integrated into that final, this is what we're going to put on the shelf?
Yeah, I think for us, we spend a lot of time trying to help our clients figure out what that finished product is that they're really wanting, what that finished form is. If we look at the pet food industry, there are so many different ways that a product can hit the pet food shelves, right? Sometimes we've got freeze-dried, we've got extruded dry kibble, we've got canned, we've got air-dried, we've got supplements and toppers, we have all of these different forms, doggy ice cream. I mean, what are we really, really looking to accomplish with the food or the treat or the supplement, which really helps us to nail down what ingredients can and can't be used, because not all ingredients can get used in all forms. And that's really hard for the average consumer, the average company getting started to understand, right? We have to take into quality, we have to take in food safety. There's so many things that have to be considered. And if you don't start thinking about those at the very beginning, when you get to the end, it's too late.
Well, that really brings up, I think, something many people are very interested in, because they want to know about ingredient quality. They want to make sure that what they're feeding is the high quality product they want. And yet there's sort of not, well, my bias is that the regulatory names don't really associate so well with quality. So how do you know that from an ingredient, and how do you help a client sort of say, this is the one, this is the ingredient? Or obviously it's probably a multi-ingredient formula, the group that fits together best.
Yeah, to your point, it's really, really hard because specifically on the back panel ingredient decks, we can't talk about ingredient quality, right? We can't list that it's a prime steak or, that really is beef. And so understanding what actually is in the bag is a really, really hard thing. And most companies, we encourage to do that with their marketing materials, right? So you can really talk quality, you can talk those kind of things on your bag, but you cannot reference that on your ingredient deck. So when you go put that product that maybe is $10, $15 more a bag next to something else, it's really hard to distinguish that. And it's a true uphill battle for companies. But for us, when it comes to helping our clients with ingredients and ingredient selection, we have some suppliers that we truly trust, and we truly try to encourage companies to use people that are reputable in the industry. And that really goes a long ways. Now, there's a lot of great ingredients that have bad names. There's some good ingredients that take bad raps. There's bad ingredients that sometimes get good raps. And so it's really, really diving in and understanding what our client is ultimately wanting to market their product as and where they want that to sit on the shelf, because there's a very big difference in price points, and what you're wanting to compete against is really important to know, which then goes back to those ingredient questions and helping to pick the right form.
I think it's fascinating. I have noticed, and from my time, I've noticed some products are positioned, and you recognize the position is not bad. They are a low cost price point is what they're comparing on, and that's their niche. They want to be there. They're there. They're very happy to be there, and people are happy with the product. They're complete and balanced. Their pets are going to have reproductive performance, and they're going to live a good life. It's not optimum nutrition. They're not really trying optimum nutrition. But the funny thing is, this is the thing that makes me smile, is they talk about quality. Like they're the best, and they're the most wonderful, and the ingredients are the most wonderful. And you think, well, not really, but that's the problem, right? The consumer, no one says, hey, look, I'm doing cheap here. I mean, nobody says that.
And, I commonly get asked by friends and family, right? Like, what should I feed my dog? What should I feed my cat? If you engage with a conversation on a plane and they ask what you do, you say you're an animal nutritionist, guaranteed within the first 30 seconds, they're going to ask, what should I feed my dog? What should I feed my cat? And I always start with, what are you feeding today and does it work, right? Because there's a really big point in that. If it works, you should, and it works for your dog, that's great, right? There's not much you and I can eat that is complete and balanced, right? We have to make choices for ourselves on a daily basis to try to meet our nutritional requirements. But to your point, whether you're feeding an entry-level food or a premium food, they should be meeting your dog's minimum or cat's minimum nutritional requirements, right? If they say they're complete and balanced. But where you start to see some of those changes and some of those benefits is as you step up, right, and start seeing some difference in nutrition. It doesn't make the bottom products wrong. It just means that they are the entry level and your basics, and you kind of step up from there.
I've always admired the marketplace in that sense, and that spectrum exists, and some of it's not. And I want to talk about this with you about, as you bring idea to marketplace, you mentioned it. some of it's not nutrition based. Someone may say, I eat this kind of food and I want this kind of food for my pet. How does that work through in your understanding from again, that idea to market? If someone's coming out, you mentioned it, this is something I believe is best. Not really necessarily nutrition, but and I think the market has that strong place.
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely niche markets that are that, right? There's the vegetarian, the vegan markets that are for those, and a lot of people who believe in eating that way want to feed their pets that way. And so it's really, really helping to optimize nutrition and ensuring that in that bag, in that kibble, right, we are complete and balanced. And so there's certain ingredients you have to select as you're helping to develop those things that I would call our more niche market than your mainstream. Again, doesn't make them wrong. There's people that want them, and there's the fact that a consumer has a want for it means that the companies are going to develop it, right? We're starting to see insect-based diets, right? With dried cricket being approved as an AFCO ingredient, black soldier fly larvae, right? We've got companies out there that are completely insect-based diets. And so as the consumer demands these sort of products, you're seeing companies develop them. And so those are the things that as a nutritionist, we have to spend more time making sure we understand those raw materials, because I have a pretty good understanding of what chicken brings to the party, right? I understand what beef brings to the party. I'm going to be honest, when I first did my first insect-based diet, I really wasn't sure what a cricket brought to the party. Right? Nutritionally speaking, I don't have a lot of cricket eating background, and so I'm not really sure what the cricket was helping with. And so we really got to spend the time to understand them nutritionally. How are they going to process is another really important factor, right? Because not everything can be extruded, nor can everything be a canned or a lightly cooked diet, because the way it looks, the appearance at the end is going to be really important in a consumer actually buying the product.
It's interesting about that. Just so many things sort of fascinate me as a nutritionist and as a pet food guy. I think there is this stretch to provide perhaps very sustainable food. So that's why some of these new ingredients are coming in. Perhaps, it's almost a moral decision that I want to have a vegetarian food. These things, they define a product, and that sort of makes the process you're talking about a different one.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's totally different in how you go about developing those. And again, back to, I've said it multiple times, but really, really understanding the form that you want it to be finished in so that you make sure you're using the right ingredients in the right form at the starting point.
I'm very interested in some of these novel ingredients. Could you tell me a little bit about your perspective, why they're coming? And you said, it's difficult maybe because a lack of familiarity to use them. What did you have to do to say, okay, this is an ingredient I'd like to put in a pet food?
For us, we really have to start with AFCO, right? We really want those ingredients to be approved. And we do have clients that obviously use ingredients that don't have an AFCO definition. At the very least, we need GRAS. We need some assurance that the ingredient that they're using is okay, right, to be used in pet food. And so there's got to be some version, something out there that helps us to understand that. So that kind of becomes our first kind of test of the water. Does it have an AFCO definition? Are we okay to use it? And once we put it in pet food, is it not going to get pulled off the shelves by regulators, right? And so somebody has to take the time to do that. I'm not saying that process is the right process. I'm not saying that it's an easy process, but with the way pet food is today, that's the truth. That's what we have to do. And so that's kind of step one, right?
Yeah.
Do we have an AFCO definition? Do we have a place that we can use it that we're comfortable with, right? For me, after that, as much nutritional information as I can get, which typically has to come from the supplier. So there's times we have to work with the supplier to really help them understand what they need to know about their own ingredient, right? Do we have a high calcium and phosphorus value, which is going to make it hard to use in large breed puppy formulas?
Sure.
Do we have a super low amino acid profile, which means we really are going to have to supplement with something that helps fill those gaps? So those are kind of the first couple tests that I need. After that, I want to touch it and feel it, right? So is it hydroscopic, right? Are we going to have trouble processing it? Because if we're trying to mix this with a variety of other ingredients to then send through an extruder and then it cakes up prior to that, we're going to have issues, right? No plant wants to bring in to send in a formula with ingredients that basically create cement.
Nobody wants to see cement either.
Trust me, back in my early days in pet food, I had the chance to clean out some stuff that one of my formulations did on a Friday afternoon through the extruder. So I don't need that experience again. I feel like I've checked that box.
Yeah.
So I really like to understand what that ingredient is going to process like. So once we get those things, we can really kind of help to understand how we can combine that with other ingredients to truly make what we believe could be the best pet food diet that we possibly can make, right? But with that said, it's not always up to me, right? There's marketing claims. They may be a grain-free diet, so maybe I need to use X ingredient, but I can't because it's off the table. Or maybe they are a holistic diet and I have to be able to work in fruits, vegetables, some sort of a dairy claim, right? Like there's certain things that occasionally have to get put into these diets that really are beyond what I may or may not have wanted. And I have to make sure I have the space in there for those ingredients.
Well, you touched on regulatory, and it's a place that, the regulations are there to protect the consumer, to make an even playing field. What would you like? What do you like about them? And then maybe if you could say, someday I hope to have a regulator that I know a number of them. I've asked them, they're not responding. But from your perspective, what do you like about what's out there, and maybe what if you could change, if you would take AAFCO moving forward or FDA moving forward, what would you have them do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great the information that they want and that the due diligence that they go through to make sure the ingredients are safe. For me personally, it's hard when dried crickets has a definition, but crickets in their full moisture content don't have a definition. That's a hard thing for me to understand, how it's approved one way, but it's not approved the other way. And I understand that somebody has to do the studies and pay the money, but for one company, a cricket supplier, for example, right, to do all of that work to then have everybody else be able to use it at the end is really, it's hard. And I understand why ingredient suppliers have a hard time swallowing the amount of money that they need to spend to get a definition that ultimately is then available to everybody. And so I understand somebody's got to pay for it. And so I don't have any smoking gun answers on how you fix it, but we do have to figure out a better way to get ingredient definitions to the finish line. And I know that's something they're currently working on and working through. And I'm hoping that here in the near future, we're going to see some improvements with that. So also, with all that being said, there's just a lot of confusion about rules, right? The with, all of those things are things that you and I probably understand, right? If it's made with something, it has to have 3% of it. If it's the two ingredients need to combine for 25%. Those are all great, and it helps all of us to keep our products in check. But to the average consumer, I would say they don't understand what that means.
Yeah, it's sort of, again, it allows an even playing field. But if the consumer doesn't understand that playing field, it's harder. Bringing that ingredient to the marketplace, it's difficult because we want safe ingredients. We want standardized ways of talking about ingredients. But there's a problem that I like to say, I don't have a solution either. What about the nutritional platforms? And since I was the AAFCO committee that prescribed minimums for dog and cat nutrition, is that something that you use? Is it beneficial? Would you like to see it change?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's something I use on a daily basis. I mean, my Concept 5 is even loaded with the minimum AAFCO profiles for dog and cat, so I can quickly compare my formulas, on a dry matter basis. And so those are things we look at, or I look at daily. I do think it's interesting because certain companies go above and beyond, right? They may have different requirements that they're wanting in addition to what's already in there. It's a little bit complicated when the EU's requirements are different than that of AAFCO. The NRC is a little bit different. There's the whole copper thing that's floating around right now. And is there not need to be an AAFCO max on copper? So there's a lot rolling around in that world. But I think with that being said, that's true of human nutrition too, right? Like, it's always a moving target. And I think as we learn more, we get better. And that's really all we can ask, is that academia keeps moving us forward for nutrition, and that AAFCO kind of follows that and moves those as we get better answers.
Because there are better answers. And of course, these are passionately argued answers sometimes. You've used copper as an example. Some are very passionate on both sides. And that's a whole nother talk. Let's not talk copper this time.
I don't think I'm ready to talk copper in this sort of setting.
Yeah, we'll try and provide that optimum nutrition. And it's hard because maybe we could talk a little bit about this in the broad sense. Copper is hard because there's clearly a group of pets that cannot handle high copper or normal copper. And so, pet food companies have made low copper foods. Should that go everywhere? In general, though, as you think about product development, what we've talked most about is consumer niches. What do you think about true nutritional niches? Is that something you're familiar with? And have you kind of tried to work through, you mentioned large breed growth, which has a special requirement, of course. But are there others too that you would say, yes, here's a niche for product development that's sort of unique?
A lot of pet food companies have kind of those niche diets, right? Large breed puppy diets, a digestive health diet. We play in this a lot more on the supplement side.
Yeah.
You may see a skin and coat benefit kind of diet or supplement, something that is for joint health. There's a lot of those, and there's certain ingredients that play really well in there. I would say for the most part, when I'm doing complete and balanced diets, most of our clients are mid to upper tiered clients that are probably fairly small, right? Because if they're hiring me to do their nutrition work, they're probably not big enough to have their own nutritionist on staff. And so they want a lot of those in every diet, right? So we have a lot of prebiotic and probiotics used in the diets so when I think of those kind of things, I think of supplements, right? Because most of the regular diets that I'm formulating on a day-to-day basis have a lot of that. We make sure we have omega-3s for skin and coat health going on. We've got pre and probiotics, maybe even some postbiotics. That's kind of a big thing in the human nutrition and coming over into pet food very quickly. We probably have some joint health in our large breed and senior-like diets. So we're bringing a lot of that into the diet already because they want those features and benefits in those lines of pet food.
Lots of times I think the consumers actually see a benefit. Sometimes we have trouble as nutritionists because we argue, you're getting this long-term benefit. They'll live a long, healthy life. And the consumer's going, they look pretty much the same today as they lived yesterday. In a number of these, they can see a benefit. And of course, that certainly drives the perception of the value of the product. How do you help a someone says, okay, I want all these things. And how do you help them decide what they can say about it? Again, we sort of described there's an ingredient panel that will give an ingredient name, but some of those names are just totally non-descriptive. A consumer would never know even why that product or that ingredient was in that product. How do you help them understand what they can say about it?
Yeah, claim support is a interesting part of our job, and some companies want to come out with all of these really strong claims, right?
Well, we all want really strong claims.
Right, but
what are wrong with those companies that don't want them?
They want, but well, we're not curing anything here with these diets, and we're sure not going to claim we're curing it, right? But aids in, treats, supports, those are kind of words that we make sure that supports joint health, right? Supports skin and coat health, making sure that the words are correct, right? That we're not saying that this is the magic pill that is going to solve everything in our dog or cat's lives, because I wish that we found that. But if we found that, I probably would be on an island somewhere, not hanging out here in cold Nebraska. So
what? Nebraska isn't the best.
I mean, I'm just saying there might be a better place than winter in Nebraska, right? I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there. But so really making sure they understand what ingredients help with what function, right? And ultimately what you can say about that is really important. So we usually encourage our clients up front to build kind of a product brief, right? What are you really wanting to say? What are you wanting to name this? Like, we have some questions that we try to help lead them to where they need to go, because the last thing we want to do, right, like I said earlier, is get to the end and find out that we've created the best extruded diet possible and they want it to be air dried. Right. And at that point, those two forms are not the same. And I need to go change my ingredients.
Well, change everything. Yeah, start over.
Yep. So there's just a lot that has to be understood in the beginning. And honestly, what we have found is a lot of times our clients don't 100% even know what they want that finished form to be.
Well, I'm sure that's part of this whole process we're talking about, that you're going to come together as a group and say, here's what we'd like to sell. Here's the kind of message we'd like to have. How then do we bring that out? To me, it's always fascinating as how people work together. I've been in many teams. I've led teams. I wonder if we could chat a bit, but it sounds so much like this job you're doing that has such dynamic people interactions associated with it. Can we talk about that a minute? What do you find? What do you look for, and how do you find the path forward in them?
Yeah, I mean, it really is very client dependent, right? On interactions. I'm a people person, right? And so for me, kind of having some sort of comfort level is really important, right? And so the more information we can share, the better off that interaction, that team becomes, right? Because if there's a silo effect happening on either side, I feel like we don't get very good products to the finish line. And not necessarily the product, it takes longer to get that product to the finish line is probably a better way to say that. So yeah, really understanding what they're looking for, helping to guide people with when they're wanting something that is hard, maybe even virtually impossible currently, whether it be that form is not currently made in the United States. We don't have a good co-man for that option, because typically we're helping to help our clients find a co-man as well, right? Most of them are not large enough that they have their own production facilities. So we really have to help match that up as well. So really, really getting that open dialogue, that open communication in the beginning to really drive that team forward is really important. We like to know all the players on that side. You've got 2 players on the Evolve side, myself and Kent. That's it. So it's pretty easy for us to get the 2 of us together. Sometimes it's hard for our clients to get their entire teams together because they're busy, right? They're running a business as well. And so to your point, the team dynamic can be quite possibly one of the most interesting things to corral.
Yes, it's fascinating to me anyway. It sounds like you really need to establish what success looks like. And then, of course, then that how do we interact with each other? Those make sense. Do you ever have trouble figuring out who makes decisions, in this, what they've imparted to you, and who on the other side is actually a final decision maker? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty fortunate for the most part. A lot of times we work with smaller companies, right? So a lot of those people do have multiple roles and in that decision-making process. There are times that we really have to make sure it goes through the right channels to get the decision. I will say, making sure that people fully understand the timeline and the costs of getting something to the finish line is probably our 2 biggest hurdles we really have to make sure our clients understand. Because as you and I probably are both very, very well aware, developing a pet food product doesn't happen in 3 months. But the reality of most clients is that they think that if they have an idea today, by Super Zoo, which is in August, it should be on the shelf and they should be able to launch it there. And depending on the form, the co-man, and how quickly they make those decisions, that might be possible. But for the most part, it's probably not possible. We're really probably looking at 9 months, and that's having quick decision-making time.
I think it's fascinating. I think most people do not have a timeline in mind that's anywhere near what's real in that process. The other thing I'm guessing is that it's more expensive than many people think, and that's kind of like y'all smile. There's, of course, it's more expensive, but it's really quite expensive, and that can be a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be. And depending on the form they're wanting, minimum batch sizes are huge, right? If you want a dry extruded product, probably 40,000 pounds is about as small as we could find you at a co-man. I mean, if we beg, plead, and borrow, we may be able to get that a little lower a couple places, but for the most part, that's about as small as you can go, right? And you say, okay, well, on average, a diet is $1 a pound just for the raw materials, and then you need to process it, you need to put it in packaging, you need to ship it, you need to market it. So you start rolling all of those dollars up, and it becomes fairly large fairly quickly. Now, you can make a cheaper diet and you can make a more expensive diet, but if we're just kind of picking something in the middle, it doesn't take long and those dollars get big.
And you might even need more than one run.
Correct. So that's something we always have to talk about in the beginning too. Just because on paper it works doesn't mean in real life everything's going to meet nutritionally. And before you launch this product, we need to check all these boxes. So it goes back to those AFCO minimums we talked about earlier, right? If we're low in methionine, we need to ensure that we're coming out with the best diet we can come out with. And in order to do that, you need to run it, you need to test it, and then you need to ensure that it's there.
It's good for the consumer, of course, because then you know that you are marketing a product that is what it claims to be, that pet will thrive on it. And wherever you are in that spectrum from, low cost producer to, everything optimum we can really establish, those minimums, those maximums, that criteria of success needs to be met. So it's not easy. So time and money, both are going to be spent. And that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people also don't even think of the lead time for packaging, right? Like we have to have proof of concept, right? We need to ensure we're meeting these minimum GAs before you can go print packaging, right? Because we need to ensure that we can check all those boxes. Well, packaging lead time could be as much as 3 months, depending on where you're getting your packaging from. So there's so many things that layer on, and yeah, they all have to get checked in order for it to get to the finish line. And so those are all things that people need to take into account as they're developing these products.
ICC Animal Nutrition, a Brazilian company with 30 years of history and present in more than 70 different countries, providing natural, sustainable, and technological solutions for animal nutrition, health, and well-being in a safe and scientific way, adding value in food production and helping to feed the world.
Well, if I'm a consumer, I think a question that just I would love to get your opinion on, if you're able to give it in a broad sense, no specifics, but I'm buying this product on the pet food aisle. It's quite expensive, and I kind of think, if I walk over there and buy meat and potatoes on a per pound basis, I'm kind of the same place. What percentage? I would wonder if you would be able to tell us, that cost of goods sold, what percentage is sort of ingredients, packaging, the whole process of making it all work together. How much comes back to that formulation cost that you were describing earlier?
If we kind of just talk about that $1 a pound food I was talking about, right, from the beginning. So typically you're going to have we're going to say $1 a pound raw material cost, just for quick, easy math, right? You probably have another 10 to 15 cents in packaging, filling, all of that. If you have a co-man, you probably have another 10 to 15 cents minimum, right, in getting that product ran. So now our $1 a pound product could be $1.30, right? And we're just putting it in the bag.
And no one's made any money on it yet, right?
And nobody's made any money, right? So now the pet food company probably wants to make, depending on who they are and how aggressive they are, somewhere between 10 and 30%, right? Then they need to send it to a distributor who ultimately probably wants to make close to the same in order to put it on a retail store shelf, who probably wants to make somewhere near the same. And so it's why you're seeing a lot of direct-to-consumer products coming out, right? People are trying to cut out some of the middleman, which may or may not always be helpful. But yeah, I mean, to get those products rolled up, it is very expensive for pet food. But you mentioned, the go buy yourself some chicken or some potato and go ahead and make food. And, there are people out there that are home cooking and they believe they're doing it cheaper, and which is great. And they're controlling their quality. With that being said, nutritionally speaking, I really, really hope that they are doing some sort of supplementation in order to make sure you're getting the vitamins and minerals those pets need. I see a lot of stuff online of people encouraging to home cook, and that's great. And I have nothing against it. Just nutritionally speaking, making sure that they're doing it with some supplementation is really important.
I think there are some universities that sort of help people. I would highly recommend that. And I would say it's not easy. That we have as our diets, we have this diversity of ingredients that allow us. And on top of that, I take supplementation. So that's my nutritionist perspective. It's not easy to optimize nutrition for your pet, and that's obviously my bias.
Agreed. And, unlike us who eat different things every day, right? And so maybe today I was low in something, but tomorrow I ate something different that has more of it. Our pet, we're feeding the same thing most of us are feeding the same thing or something similar on a day-to-day basis. So if you're deficient day over day, which ultimately leads to issues long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if we could talk, so I would like to summarize a little bit. So what you said, I think, is this process is very very intricate. It takes a lot of teamwork. It takes a lot of time and really significant amounts of money to be successful. I think as far as the nutrition we've sort of said, what really matters is the nutrients within the ingredients. So you have a spectrum of ingredients you can choose to provide those nutrients. And then each ingredient comes with its own specific benefits and things you watch for. Is that kind of what we've got so far, do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the diet itself is dependent on those ingredients we pick from, right? Most of the diets I'm doing are not a 95% beef or a 95%.
I hope so.
Most of them are a blend, right? They're a blend of ingredients, which gives me, depending on how much I'm locked down, right, for ingredient choices, it really gives me a ton of opportunity to make what I feel could be the best nutritional choices possible, right? I will limit my calcium value, but I may want a high omega-3 value, and I can set those parameters, and it's going to use the ingredients that I've given it from a formulation standpoint to meet all of that. So I truly can create the diet that I believe and our client is asking for, just based off of kind of nutritional parameters, not inclusion rates of ingredients. That comes based on nutritionally what I'm asking for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So you're being driven by an ingredient choice, of course, because your clients are describing what they want in the food, but foundationally being driven by a nutritional choice that the ingredients are providing. That's reasonable. I'm spinning back, and I hope you will with me to, this interaction with people. It just strikes me as the job you have is so much of that spot where interaction is required. And to a certain degree, again, lots of things go into this, but if you had the choice and you could say, I'm looking for this kind of person to be on the team that, for all intents and purposes, you're leading, what would be the characteristics of that person?
So for me personally, I love the person that allows us to be as much a part of the process as possible, right? That is where I feel like as a whole, we can develop the best products possible, right? So we get to listen in on the product development internally for that company so that we can hear what they're really wanting versus just getting an email that has bullet point lists, right, of this, this, and this. Because ultimately, we all think we include everything we want in a list, but we're really pretty, I may say to bring a toothbrush, but you forgot the toothpaste, right? And so understanding that when you want one, you really need the other is really important to us. So for me personally, having people that allow us to help be a part of that process, whether we have input or don't have input, it's really important to hear it firsthand versus having hey, we have this R&D meeting and then we're going to hand it over to you guys. And then when we have a question, then that has to go back through our point of contact, which ultimately runs up the channel. If I can just hear it firsthand, it's quicker, it's faster, and ultimately it's cheaper for them, right? Because we can be more efficient with their time and our time. So a good communication at the start, which I understand I've said communication probably, 20 times already, but
I picked that up. Yeah.
It really, really comes down to good communication and ultimately allows us to be as successful as possible from the start all the way to getting it to the finish line.
I wonder if you could tell lots of people who watch these podcasts, they may be just in the beginning of their careers. I wonder if you could tell them what you think about the career you found yourself in, and is it one where there's an opportunity for perhaps a student to start looking in that way, or has it been something you've enjoyed? Just give me a career look back for a minute, if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think starting in the pet food industry, if I go back to one of my grad school professors, I was a ruminant nutritionist, right, in graduate school. He told me, I give you 6 months in the pet food industry and you'll be back, right? You'll be back to large animal because there is no future there. You're not going to make it in that. And ultimately, here I am all these years later, still in the pet food industry. And so it's been great. Every day is something a little bit different, which is fun. We've had the opportunity to work on pretty much every form of pet food that exists out there, which allows me on a day-to-day basis to have to continue to learn. So I will say for those that are just getting started, really, really spend the time, learn all the different aspects. I never really thought that the manufacturing time that I spent at the plant, being the nutritionist at the plant, seeing it run would be super beneficial. But now today, I obviously have no plant. I'm sitting in an office, but I can relate to what that's going to run like on a plant floor. So understanding the ingredient quality, the true quality aspects of the products as they're running. Why do we need to understand the ingredient quality and what does that play into the finished product? So even though on a day-to-day basis, my job is to formulate nutritionally complete and balanced or nutritional beneficial diets, all of those other things have to be known and they have to be taken into consideration, or ultimately what I make to put in a bag doesn't really matter.
Sounds like you're saying that maybe times have changed a bit, but that the youth perceive that this is an area where there is significant opportunity, lots of different types of jobs, probably not many that will end up in the position you are, but in the pet food industry, you'd say there's good career opportunities.
Absolutely. There's good career opportunities. The majority of your large pet food companies have a whole staff of animal nutritionists on their payroll, right? A lot of your raw material ingredient suppliers even have nutritionists on staff, right? Because they need to fully understand what they're producing. So there is a ton of opportunity, whether you want to be in finished product, you want to be in ingredient development, you want to play the role that I play and kind of work with a variety of different companies and do ingredient/product development. There is definitely opportunity in the pet food industry.
Well, it sounds exciting. For me, looking back at a career, I think when I started, no one would have recommended me getting into pet food nutrition. I came out really with a kind of a lab background, and nutrition was an application. But it's been fun. Yeah, I love to see the order come together. Of course, I'm more of a research scientist in the past. Order coming out of that randomness that at first appears, and then what you perceive, and I think must be a great sort of outside of compensation, but a great benefit of seeing that product actually making a difference in the lives of pets. That's fun, isn't it? It's really something that we can be happy with.
Yeah, it's fun for me to go to the pet food store and, support and pick up products that I've worked on. And I know the companies have been passionate about developing and how much work they put into it and making sure that they are meeting those needs of the pets. So absolutely, it's very fun to be able to go to the store and see that finished product.
Well, thank you for our time together. Anything, any other thoughts that you might have as we look back at our conversation?
No, I appreciate you having me. It's been fun, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well, and I look forward to chatting with you in the future. Maybe we could talk again about some of the pet food science areas that you've been in, but this has been enjoyable for me, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.